I've been waiting for this readathon to spice up my life. I've been waiting for this watchathon to remind me of my youth. Hey everyone! Welcome to Kat's Novel Adventures. In today's video, I am finally sharing my TBR plus my TBW, as well as some recommendations of things to read and watch for this epic nostalgiathon called Old School April. I am super excited about Old School April, and I cannot wait to share everything I will be reading and watching in the month of April. It is going to be so much fun. This epic nostalgiathon was created by Kelsi over at Slime & Slasher. She's one of my favorite people on the planet. I love her dearly. She's also my partner in crime, and I'm very excited that she invited me to be one of the co-hosts. I want to start with my TBR. I will read the prompt, then I will share what I'm reading, and then I'll give you some recommendations. I have my handy notes here with all my books that I will be reading, as well as piles of books all over my bed with recommendations for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Prompt number 1 is to read any Goosebumps book or read a book that fits the theme or vibe of an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Publishing year doesn't matter. I am reading a Goosebumps book for this prompt, and it is Night of the Living Dummy 2. I would also recommend, if you want to read a Goosebumps book, checking out Night of the Living Dummy, Ghost Beach, or Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. I have recently read all 3 of these and really enjoyed them. As far as Are You Afraid of the Dark, Kelsi created some prompts or suggestions. So if you're picking a book that matches the vibe of any Are You Afraid of the Dark, I chose 2 possibilities for you. The Tale of the Ghastly Grinner, she recommends reading a comic book. So I'm recommending Road Rage. It has 2 comic books in it. The first one is Throttle, which was written by Stephen King and his son, Joe Hill. And then there's also Duel, which was written by Richard Matheson. For The Tale of Dead Man's Float, you could read a book featuring a pool or any kind of water. And I chose a picture book to recommend to you by Chris Van Allsburg. He is the writer and illustrator of this book called The Wretched Stone. He is one of my favorite authors, and I don't think you can go wrong with reading Chris Van Allsburg. I am putting some picture books throughout my recommendations. One, because there is another readathon in April where you can read picture books, and some of them might work for that event if you're participating. And also a friend of mine asked if you could read children's books for Old School April, and of course you can. Prompt number 2 is to read any horror book published or set in the 80s, or read a middle grade or YA book published or set in the 80s. And I am going with a book that I've already read, but it's been several years, and that is The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. Look at that cover. This was published in 1986, and it is a nerve-shattering novella about the human heart and all the great terrors and ecstasies within its endless domain. It is about greed and love, lovelessness and despair, desire and death, life and captivity, bells and blood. It is one of the most dead, frightening stories you are likely to ever read. And if you didn't know this, Hellraiser is based on this fabulous horror novella. which I might end up putting Hellraiser on my list to watch. Who knows? Anyway, my other recommendations, this is what I'm reading, but I would also recommend it to you. I would recommend reading Pet Sematary, Awesome by Stephen King. Another Clive Barker book called Cabal. The movie Nightbreed is based on Cabal. My friend Kelsi and I talked about this at one time because we buddy read it and then we ended up watching the movie. And as far as a picture book, I got a story out of Diane Good's book of scary stories and songs. There was only one story that was published in the 80s, and that story is called The Man Who Was Afraid of Nothing. It is a Native American tale, so check that out. As far as recommendations for books that are set in the 80s, I would definitely check out Ready Player One. This is by Ernest Cline. This is my co-host recommendation. So if you read this one, you will get 2 points because you're reading it for the prompt and you're also reading my recommendation. It does take place in a future time. However, the main character goes into a virtual reality game, and the creator of the game has designed it with all kinds of 80s pop culture. So there's tons of 80s references when it comes to music, video games, movies, books, etc. Another book that you might be interested that has 80s vibes is Video Night by Adam Cesar. And one of my favorites is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. Now, this book right here could fulfill lots of different prompts, just like my Night of the Living Dummy too. So keep in mind, some of the books that I'm showing you today might actually also count as other prompts, and then you can get multiple points for reading one book. Prompt number 3 is to read an animal attack book. Publishing year doesn't matter. And I am reading The Werewolf of Fever Swamp. I thought this would be pretty cool. As far as recommendations, I will recommend a book that literally broke my heart, and that is Cujo by Stephen King. Another Stephen King book you might be interested in is The Cycle of the Werewolf. It is not very long, but very good. The movie Silver Bullet is based on this book. Kelsi and I also buddy read this and watched the movie together. As far as children's books, I would recommend Bunnicula. It has a bunny in it that has a dark side to him. And as far as a picture book, I'm going to suggest Neil Gaiman's The Wolves in the Wall. Now, I don't read many animal attack books, so this is the best I could do as far as recommendations. Prompt number 4 is nostalgic technology. Read a book featuring older technology on the cover or in the story: cassettes, tube TV, arcade machines, VHS tapes, Walkman, radio, Polaroid pictures, typewriter, corded telephone. Publishing year doesn't matter. I have chosen The Secret of the Old Clock by Carolyn Keene. If you notice, there is an old clock. So that's pretty old school. In fact, Kelsi and I were talking, and she was saying that some kids today might not even know how to read a clock like this. Also, I didn't get to it in March, so I'm carrying it over. So I'm excited that I'm going to finally be able to read it. Also, I have recommendations, and these are probably kind of a stretch, but Lois Duncan wrote a book called Locked in Time, and there is an hourglass on the cover. I'm not sure if you can see that. I read this book as part of a Nostalgiathon that Kelsi did last year, and I chose only The Brave because there were typewriters in it, and this is about as old school as you can get because it took place many, many years ago. It's a Western. It's a Gunsmoke Western. First one I've ever read, and I actually enjoyed it. Not very long at all. And as far as a picture book, I chose Patricia Polacco's The Graves Family. And the reason I chose this for the nostalgic technology is because if you notice, it has a door knocker. There are no doorbells on it, and I can guarantee you they don't have any kind of a doorbell with a camera in it. But I think this would work as far as picture books. And Patricia Polacco is also another one of my favorites. Prompt number 5 is a mood read, and it is a book published in or set in 2003 or earlier, or a book with a retro vibe. I am reading The Unexpected Guest, which has been adapted as a novel by Charles Osborne, and it's based on a play that was written by Agatha Christie. This book was published in the 90s. It was also on my TBR for March, and I didn't get to it either, so I'm excited that I can carry it over and finally get to it. I have a picture book that I'm also going to be reading, and it is The X-Files: Earth Children Are Weird. And this will have retro vibes because we know that the X-Files started off in the 90s, and if they're kids, they're going to be younger. So I thought it would fit, and it's a picture book. I'm very excited. I have no real recommendations for you because it's a mood read, so you get to choose whatever you want to read as long as you follow the criteria of the prompt. Prompt number 6 is to read a Fear Street book or a Point horror book or a Christopher Pike book. I've chosen Double Date, which is a Fear Street book written by R.L. Stine. I unfortunately do not have any recommendations for a Point horror book. I don't believe I've ever read one, and I definitely don't have one for Christopher Pike because I have not had a chance to read any of his books yet. I do have one Fear Street book that I can recommend, and that is Silent Night. And it does take place during Christmas time. I read this a couple of years ago around Christmas, but it was really good, and I'm glad I read it. It was a good introduction to the Fear Street series. Prompt number 7 is Teen Witch. Read a book with magic, magical elements, magical items, wizards, sorcerers, witches, cursed objects, occult, supernatural elements, etc. Publishing year doesn't matter. I am reading We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix, and my book is on order. I do not have a physical copy yet, but I'm really excited about reading my next Grady Hendrix book because I've only read the one, which is My Best Friend's Exorcism. Now, as far as recommendations, I would recommend Alice Hoffman's Practical Magic. I liked it. It's more of a romance, but there are some creepy elements to it. And of course, it's got magic and it has witches. Another book that I would recommend is the first in a series. It's called Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page. I read this one in December and I really enjoyed it. It is a retelling of The Wizard of Oz. I would highly recommend it if you like YA books. It really was adventurous, and it does, of course, have magical elements. Another great book that I can recommend is The Witches by Roald Dahl. Fabulous. Another cute little witch book is called The Power of Poppy Pendle. This is by Natasha Lowe, and I really did enjoy it. And there are also some recipes in the back because Poppy loves to bake. And I just recently finished this book for book club, and it is Vacancy, and there are some supernatural elements in this book as well. This is by K.R. Alexander, and it is a middle grade horror book. And I do have a picture book recommendation, another Chris Van Allsburg book, and it is called The Widow's Broom, one of my favorites of his, and of course it does have magical elements. The broom is what is magical. Prompt number 8, Read any horror book published in the 90s or read a middle grade or YA book published or set in the 90s. And I have chosen The Sundog by Stephen King. As far as recommendations, I recommend Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King, Practical Demon Keeping by Christopher Moore, The Reckoning by Ruby Jean Jensen, Relic, which is the first in a series by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. I really love this series. It features one of my favorite literary characters, FBI agent Pentagast, but this is the first in the series, and it's got a creepy creature running loose in a museum. And as far as picture books go, I have two. I have Garfield's Ghost Stories, and I also have Garfield's Scary Tales. You can't go wrong with Garfield. Prompt number 9, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Read a story or book with a female protagonist, or a book or story written by a woman. Publishing year doesn't matter. I am reading In Every Generation by Kendar Blake. I'm looking forward to reading this because it's in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe. As far as recommendations, And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice, Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Caw. This is a novella. It's a short one. Doll Bones by Holly Black, In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware, and for my picture book recommendation, Night of the Gargoyles by Eve Bunting. Kelsi has also included a bonus or replacement prompt. You are to read a book with neon on the cover. Publishing year doesn't matter. And I'm going to try to read another book that I did not get to from March, and that is Rise of the Princess by D.A.L. This is actually an ARC that was sent to me by Daniel, and I have not been able to read it yet, and it's making me frustrated. So hopefully I can squeeze it in for old school April. Does Barry Manilow know that you raid his wardrobe? John Bender, The Breakfast Club, one of my favorite movies in the whole wide world. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Movies and TV shows that I plan to watch during Old School April. And I will give you some recommendations along the way. Prompt number 1 is to watch a Goosebumps episode. And I've decided I'm going to watch Cry of the Cat. There are a few Goosebumps episodes on Netflix that you can stream, and they are Haunted Mask, Haunted Mask 2, A Night in Terror Tower, The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, which I'll probably end up watching that one as well since I'm reading the book, Welcome to the Dead House, and Night of the Living Dummy 3. Prompt number 2. Watch any 80s horror movie. And I have decided to watch the 1980 film The Fog, directed by John Carpenter, and it stars the Scream Queen, Jamie Lee Curtis, as well as the actress Adrienne Barbeau. My recommendations are My Bloody Valentine, April Fool's Day, Terror Train, another Jamie Lee Curtis, Sleepaway Camp. If you haven't watched Sleepaway Camp, I highly recommend it. Gremlins, Pet Sematary, Prom Night, another Jamie Lee Curtis, Hellraiser, Nightmare on Elm Street, especially if you like Johnny Depp, it was his first film, The Shining, Poltergeist, Silver Bullet, Friday the 13th, and Fright Night. Prompt number 3, watch an episode of any 90s Nickelodeon show or watch a Nickelodeon movie. And I have decided to watch Good Burger. Welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger. Can I take your order? I love that movie, so I'm looking so forward to watching that one again. Some recommendations for TV shows are Rugrats, Hey Arnold, All That, Ren and Stimpy, Keenan and Kel, Cat Dog, The Angry Beavers, and as far as movies, you might want to check out Harriet the Spy, the Rugrats movie, Hey Arnold the movie, as well as SpongeBob SquarePants. Prompt number 4. Watch a movie or TV show episode set in the 80s or 90s, or watch a newer adaptation of an old school movie, show, or book. And I have decided to watch Watchmen, directed by Zack Snyder. It is based on a comic book and it is set in 1985. As far as recommendations, when it comes to the 80s, I would say Final Girls and Summer of '84, as well as the TV show Stranger Things. And for the 90s, perhaps try Fear Street 1994. Prompt number 5, Mood Watch. Anything from 2003 or earlier. And I've decided to watch Beetlejuice, The Lost Boys, Wayne's World, and The Burbs. I really don't have any recommendations for you. However, I would suggest, since it is a mood watch, check out the host recommendations for this. You can find them in the Discord, and I will also put them in my description box as well. Prompt number 6. Watch an episode of any Disney Channel show or a Disney Channel original movie from the 90s or early 2000s, but nothing that was released after 2003. I have decided to watch Don't Look Under the Bed. My recommendations for TV shows are DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, or Adventures of the Gummy Bears. And as far as movies, I would recommend Genius, Smart House, Under Wraps, or even Halloween Town. Prompt number 7, watch any 80s movie or TV show episode. I am going to watch The Breakfast Club, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm really looking forward to watching it yet again. I've probably watched it a gajillion times. As far as 80s TV shows, my recommendations for you are Magnum P.I., The A-Team, Knight Rider, Family Ties, The Smurfs, The Facts of Life, or Different Strokes. Now, Facts of Life and Different Strokes started in the late 70s, but they have plenty of episodes that bled into the 80s. As far as movies, I recommend 16 Candles, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, St. Elmo's Fire, as well as Less Than Zero and Big with Tom Hanks. Prompt number 8, watch any 90s horror movie. I've decided I'm going to watch The Blair Witch Project from 1999. It is a found footage movie, and I haven't seen it in quite a while, so I really want to revisit it. As far as recommendations, I would suggest watching I Know What You Did Last Summer, Misery, The Langoliers, Arachnophobia, Urban Legend, Blade, From Dusk Till Dawn, Sleepy Hollow, Tremors, Silence of the Lambs, Candyman, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Seven, as well as John Carpenter's Vampires. Prompt number 9, watch any 90s movie or TV show episode. I'm super excited about this one because I get to watch my favorite TV shows, and they are The X-Files, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Forever Knight, as well as SpongeBob SquarePants. Some recommendations for you for TV shows are Seinfeld, Party of Five, Pokemon, Dawson's Creek, Pinky and the Brain, Animaniacs, and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. As far as movies, I would recommend Pretty Woman, Sleepless in Seattle, The Matrix, Jurassic Park, The Lion King, Forrest Gump, 10 Things I Hate About You. In addition to the Watchathon prompts, there are 2 bonus prompts that have to do with movies and TV shows. And I want to share what I am watching as well as some recommendations for you. So bonus prompt number 6 is to watch any movie from the 70s. And I've decided to watch Alien from 1979, but here are some recommendations of some other great movies that you might want to check out. The Godfather, Jaws, Animal House, Star Wars, The Rocky Horror Picture Show, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Carrie, Phantasm, The Amityville Horror, Meatballs, The Aristocats, The Muppet Movie, Smokey and the Bandit, as well as Young Frankenstein. Bonus prompt number 13 is to watch a movie or show starring someone you had a crush on back in the day. Well, for me, that was Michael J. Fox, Keanu Reeves, as well as Rob Lowe. And so for this prompt, I am watching The Frighteners with Michael J. Fox. I am also watching Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures with Keanu Reeves. And I haven't decided what I'm going to watch with Rob Lowe yet. It's either going to be a TV show or perhaps I might watch St. Elmo's Fire. Well, that is my TBW for the Old School April. However, keep in mind that my list for movies and TV shows are going to be fluid. So I will be adding to my movies as I go. My plan is to watch all of my movies on my TBR that I mentioned in this video, and then I will start watching some of the Host Rex movies because I'd like to see some of them as well. I want to add some extra things to my list because there's so much wonderful stuff out there to watch back from my childhood, especially my teen years, that I really, really want to revisit. If you are interested in what I am watching as far as me adding stuff as the Readathon, Watchathon, Old School April, Nostalgiathon goes on, check me out on Letterboxd. My information is in the description box. Before I wrap up, I want to suggest that you check out Kelsi's massive recommendation video. I also suggest checking out all of the hosts' TBR and recommendation videos. If you don't know who the hosts are, let me just introduce them to you. They are Elizabeth at Elizabeth Sagewood, Katrina at Katrina Brown, Andrew at It Came From the Page, Alex at The Bookubus, Sarah at Thrills and Kills Booktube, Amy at Amy Noel Reads, Kelly at Kelly Hooked on Books, and April at April and Alchemy on Instagram. I would highly recommend, if you have not subscribed to their channels, to do so. They are wonderful, wonderful people, and they have some really great content. Thanks everyone for stopping by. I really do appreciate you. I also hope that you will join me for Old School April. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I was inspired by all this excitement that I wrote a poem, a haiku actually, about the teams for Old School April. You know, it is a friendly competition after all. Here it is. Purple parrots peck, blue barracudas bite back, silver snakes sling sass. I hope you enjoyed that. I do get inspired from time to time. In the meantime, stay amazing and be adventurous.